Hi, I am so delighted to have with us Mr. Scott Hartley. Having had the pleasure to know him since more than 5 years now, Scott is the co-founder and managing partner at Everywhere Ventures. As he himself says, that he is an investor, he has been an author, and he's the founder. In fact, he has invested in more than 300 plus companies. He's the author of the book, The Fuzzy and the Techie. And that was the reason why I had the proud privilege of getting to meet him in person, have his signed book with me way back in 2018. And this book is one of the most popular books, having been the finalist for the McKinsey and Company FT Brackenbauer Prize, FT Business Book of the Month, and a top 10 business book of 2020 in Spain. He has been profiled in HBR, WSJ, BBC, PBS, New Yorker, and in commencement addresses by Fareed Zakaria and Anne-Marie Slaughter. Scott has had the privilege or the opportunity to work with Google in the US and India, Facebook, Harvard Law School, and the White House as an innovation fellow. He holds a bachelor's, master's, and MBA from Stanford and Columbia. I am so delighted, Scott, to have you over with us in this conversation. And today, the reason why I actually reached out to you is because we have a lot of students who aspire to be entrepreneurs. But because of the fact that they feel that this is not the area that they should venture in, or they have their own inhibitions, their challenges, just something which you feel can motivate them that they should reach out and go for their aspirations.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for been wonderful to get to know you over the last 5 or 6 years and to be here with you all today. So really a privilege for me. I'm dialing in from California, and so across the world. But I spent a whole year living in India, so it's really a part of my heart and part of my passion, my culture. I love India so much, so it's really a privilege for me as well. Um, yeah, so when we think about entrepreneurship, as you mentioned, we are on the investing side. So we've invested in about 300 founders over the last many years, but we've seen probably 10,000. And one of the overwhelming things that really sticks out for when we invest in companies and when we really begin to work with founders is that they're authentic, right? And so I think the truth is to start a company is a long road. It's not easy, but what it really requires first and foremost is authenticity to the problem that you're solving, and only you know that problem, right? It's something that you've experienced deeply in your life. It's maybe something that you've grown a passion around, or you've observed happen over and over again, and you feel compelled because nobody else is solving it to step into the market and try to work on that problem, because it's not going to be an overnight success. I think the misnomer with overnight successes is you kind of work hard for 5 years and then suddenly people realize and they say, oh gosh, this happened overnight. And you say, well, not really. Actually, it was a lot of small baby steps that happened along the way. And so I think in order to sustain that, you really need to be passionate about the problem that you're solving. You need to be authentic about why you're the one solving that problem. And then I think those are sort of the backbones of what really drives successful companies. And so I think first and foremost, don't feel that you have to become an entrepreneur because everyone out there is thinking, that they need to be Mark Zuckerberg. That's not the case. Be authentic to yourself. So if you love medicine, if you love history, if you love literature, pursue those activities. If you think that there's a problem that's pulling you and compelling you to want to solve, then you also shouldn't feel locked out of becoming an entrepreneur, because the truth is, and part of the impetus of my book and the focus of my book was to say, no matter what your background is, if you have authentic observation of problems in the world, you're the right one to solve those. And so some examples of that, I interviewed many founders for the book, and encourage you guys all to pick it up and have a read. But when I think about entrepreneurship, I think of myself as an investor as really a psychologist, and I think of entrepreneurs as almost more theater arts majors, right? And so what they're doing is they're telling a story, they're reading a script, they're telling me a story about what they're passionate about. And what I do as an investor is I evaluate, do I trust this person? Do I believe them? Do I think that they're authentic? Do I think that they have the gritty sort of perseverance to do this for 5 years? Or are they going to do it for 6 months and kind of get bored, get tired? And so really, you know, for you guys thinking about entrepreneurship, it's evaluate sort of the overlaps of your life and what your experiences are, and look at what the problems are that stick out, and think about, you know, am I solving for a headache, which is a small pain point, or am I solving for a heart attack, which is a major pain point? And really sort of force yourself to look for the heart attack type problems in your own world that you authentically understand and know. And sometimes, you know, that might hit you over the head and say, gosh, I already know what that is. It's this, right? If it hasn't, then there's maybe an argument to go work in an industry that you don't know something about, or get a job working for somebody. So that's another path, is sort of go into industry, get your sea legs, start experiencing the world with an open mind, looking for problems. And when you find one that you think is really intractable and nobody's solving, that's your ticket to entrepreneurship, right? So I think that there's sort of two ways in. One is like go directly into entrepreneurship, and the other is observe the world around you and find a problem that really sticks out and then pursue.
So it does help that if it is a social problem, that really helps to not only start off, but also maybe to even get support from investors and all. Does that really help? Or do you think that the problem could be anything? It need not be a social problem as such. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you know, the big thing with we invest primarily in what we call world positive ideas. And so not necessarily impact focused, but what we believe is that the word impact is much broader than sort of the definition that sometimes gets defined purely around social. So what we think is, you know, if you're empowering jobs, if you're creating a business that's changing the world, that's having impact, right? So we wouldn't invest in certain categories that we don't think are world positive, but many of them are. And so for us, you know, we don't start with a lens that it needs to be a kind of social impact or anything like that. But I would say that, you know, those are the problems that really, when you think about sort of sizes of businesses, I'd say at the small end, you're kind of building a feature that might be a small feature, a small thing. At kind of a one level up, you're building a product that sort of, you know, maybe has multiple features. You know, within a company, there's many products. So a company is maybe the next step. And then beyond that, if the company is really sort of an infrastructure layer that requires other companies to use, then you're kind of becoming a platform. And I think the biggest businesses are those that become movements, or those that become callings, right? So if you think about this, you're sort of feature, product, company, platform, movement. And I think to kind of embolden, you know, to find a movement really sort of requires, again, I think an undertone of a social change, or a big passion, a big authenticity that you really feel needs to change in the world. And you know, we see those companies, but they don't come around very often. So it's really special if you can find something that that is like that, and you sort of feel like you can move up that pipeline. Because not that the end goal is to build the biggest company, because, you know, maybe it's just a company that has a tremendous impact for a small community. But there's also many ways to sort of to build the business, and one of them is venture capital and what we do. But then there's many other modalities of getting support, getting funding. It could be, you know, a bank loan. It could be a number of different things that may be venture capital, but may not be. But it's about kind of supporting the vision and the social change that you want to be making.
Right. So also tell me one thing, like when a student is studying, you know, he could be an engineer, he could be a management graduate. A lot of times they have ideas while they are studying on campus. And sometimes we have seen that they come together with a like-minded group of students, and they want to start their own ventures when they are studying itself during their graduation or post-graduation. So do you think it is the right time to actually start exploring this? Or should they wait for the education to get over, maybe get some experience and then venture out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for the entrepreneurs that, again, are overnight successes, when you really dig into the backgrounds of the types of people they've been over their whole lives, it's usually about the 20th thing that they've started that works, right? Not the first, not the second, not the third. So I think really, if you have this passion for entrepreneurship, get started yesterday, right? Try everything. And there's no right time or wrong time to start. I think that what you're really doing, as if you're playing football or cricket or tennis or anything, it's about getting reps, right? And the number of bowls that you receive is going to inform how good of a batsman you are, right? And if you just take 2 bowls and that's it, you're probably never going to become a great batsman. If you take 100 bowls, you're going to figure out some things, right? And I think that's sort of the idea with entrepreneurship is it's about getting experience, and don't feel that you have to succeed on the first time. It's certainly not the case with any successful entrepreneur that they've succeeded on the first time. We might read about Elon Musk, but we forget the many failures, the many dead ends, the many things that didn't work, the many times he was nearly bankrupt. And so, really again, back to those personality traits that we really evaluate for on the investing side, it's authenticity to the problem that you're solving, and sort of this very perseverance, adaptable, flexible skill set. Because often with entrepreneurship, and this is where there's many parallels to other educational domains. So I talk a lot about philosophy and why philosophy is relevant for entrepreneurship. When you look at some of the best entrepreneurs out there, crazily enough, they're a lot of times philosophers, and people say, how is a philosophy major, Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, or Stuart Butterfield, who founded Slack. There's many examples of people that studied philosophy. And one of the things that Stuart Butterfield says about founding Slack, because initially it was a gaming company, and then they had a tool internally to the gaming company that was for engineering communications. And they said, the gaming thing isn't really working, but let's sort of maneuver over to this communications tool that seems to be working for us. And that became Slack. And so the parallel to philosophy is that there's no right answers in philosophy, right? You're studying, you're debating concepts, you're debating different principles. There's maybe many ways to see those concepts, and it's all gray area. And you're sort of navigating, as Stuart Butterfield says, through the dark, and you're kind of feeling your way forward through the dark. And in many ways, that's exactly like entrepreneurship. You don't know exactly where you're going. You just have to kind of iterate your way and feel your way through the dark. And so the earlier you can get started and the more chances you have to fail, frankly,
Right.
the more you're going to be able to navigate through those areas. And I'll leave you with, one final thought on this, one other metaphor. I was listening to a podcast a while back about there were 2 entrepreneurial brothers who had grown up in, I believe it was in the woods in the forest of Sweden. And they said that, he and the brother, as they were children, they would go out into the woods and they would purposefully try to get lost. And the reason they would try to get lost was because they figured if they got lost once, they could never get lost there again. And the more times they got lost, the more they would know the forest. And I thought that was such an apt metaphor for entrepreneurship. The more times you kind of get lost or you run into a dead end, you could get discouraged, or you could say, you know what, I will never be lost in that part of the forest again. And that's pretty cool.
Correct. I think that was a fantastic example, and it rightly sums up the fact that it's good to be lost in the initial stages. You become more familiar,
Absolutely.
and you can then chart out your own path. So my last question to you is that, we in India have a very formal system of education. And if I look at North Cap University, we have actually an undergraduate program which is into entrepreneurship and family business. So there are students who are interested in either continuing their family business or starting their own ventures. And this program gives them some kind of insight and all. So do you think that this kind of in a formal education really would be a pivotal point in their career to become an entrepreneur, or do you think it doesn't matter actually?
I think the definition of entrepreneurship is so broad. I think, if you're running a family business, to me, you are already an entrepreneur, right? Being an entrepreneur doesn't mean you need to have some novel new idea that needs to be blockchain or AI or virtual reality. If you're running a business that has a cost structure and profits and revenue, and you're navigating hiring and talent and education and market development and all these things that require holistic thinking around a business, you are already an entrepreneur and you're getting the best training there possibly is. And so I would say, remain open-minded to these new waves of innovation that are coming. And I think learn about these new tools, but don't feel as if you have to chase every shiny object. One thing that we see on the investing side is that every 6 months or every 1 year or 2 years, there's a different buzzword that becomes the big new thing, right? And right now it's
Very
generative AI. A couple, maybe even a year ago, it wasn't generative AI, it was still blockchain, and it was, it was Web3, and it was NFT, and it was something else. It was sharing economy, it was social web, it was, all of these different waves before. And actually, when I joined the venture fund that I was at, beginning in 2011, we had a team that focused only on this new category, this brand new category called mobile, right? And we did mobile IT. And now, if you think about it, the whole world runs de facto on mobile. People just do everything on their mobile device sometimes, and in many places, like for me. And so this whole concept, David Foster Wallace, who's an amazing author, he has this essay about at one point the fish realizes that he's in water, but doesn't really see the water around him. And in many ways, many of these technologies fade into the background and they become the water that we even forget is there, right? We forget about how server architecture works in the early internet. We
exactly.
forget about how the internet works. We forget about the fact that there used to be this concept called mobile. And so I think remain open-minded and try to learn the new tools as they come over the bow, but don't necessarily feel like you have to be distracted by everything. And I think if you, again, have a calling to one of these new disciplines, go after it. But in many ways, the opportunities to reshape a family business that has legacy, that has history, and be able to influence with some of these new tools of productivity, tools of internal management. There's so many new ways that you could find a comparative advantage against others that won't, adopt these technologies. And therefore, you are already a successful, amazing entrepreneur if you're able to sort of infuse these technologies into a legacy business. That in many ways is harder than going out there and just starting some new, a new app for Android, right?
I think that's a brilliant perspective, and I'm sure it's going to motivate the students, because this confusion always happens that I already have a family business. Can I become an entrepreneur? And while we do try to give them insights based on whatever little we understand, but coming from you, I think this will really give a good insight to them that they are on the right track. And they just need to be authentic, open-minded, passionate, and just keep doing what they really think they like doing. So that makes a whole lot of difference.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say is, if you have an industry family business that is, the weirder the better, right? And I say weird in the sense of everyone sort of comes to me with the exact same ideas many times over. They say, you know what, I have trouble with fashion fitting perfectly in my closet, so I'm building an app that better automates fashion fit, right? I've seen that idea 100 times, right? And so things like that, that are maybe not truly groundbreaking technologies, those I would say are headaches, not heart attacks, right? Now imagine your family business is in a sector like agriculture, like any large, amazing, intractable, unchanged, heavy industry. Imagine you have experience understanding even a little bit of that industry that I know nothing about. And now you're able to bring a little bit of AI or a little bit of software as a service or a little bit of anything into that world. That is the opportunity to build an incredible company, right? And so I think the areas that we actually get excited about as investors are the weirdest, farthest flung, heaviest, most archaic industries that are out there. And so I'd say, if you feel stuck because you're in a business that feels old school and it feels boring, this is actually the biggest opportunity to bring technology to bear And you should
Exactly.
look at those businesses, look at the industries that you're in, and think to yourself, in one exercise that I've encouraged people to do is make a list of kind of industries that you have experience in or know something about, and then maybe make a list of new technologies or new business models that you've observed, and play this game almost like a childhood game of mixing and matching, and say, what if I did this for that, or what if I did this for that? And you might come up with some concept that's, what if I did virtual reality goggles or augmented reality goggles to look at the livestock in my farm? And you might say, well, actually, this is an interesting idea. What if I could assess the weight of my cows on the basis of AR goggles, right? This is a great idea. This is
True.
something that's probably an interesting agricultural software as a service business, but you would never think of it without playing this childlike game of mixing and matching technology and industry. And so those are where the big opportunities, I think, sit. So the weirder, the older school of the industry, the more you feel stuck in some of those things, probably the bigger the opportunity. And if it feels shiny and brand new and fast, it's probably the thing that most other people are chasing. And so the big thing with being an entrepreneur is you need to do two things. You need to be a contrarian, you need to be a different thinker, and you need to be right. Right. And so if you're contrarian and wrong, then you just didn't find the right thing. If you're consensus and right, then who cares? Everyone's doing the same thing. You're just kind of following in the footsteps of everyone else. But if you're contrarian and right, that's where the big entrepreneur opportunities are. And so I think these are some just different ways to think about it and feel motivated and excited by things that might have otherwise gotten you stuck or gotten you sort of feeling like, oh, I'm in this thing that feels boring. Actually, no, if it's boring, it's good. It probably means there's a lot of opportunity there.
True, true. I think that hits the nail right there. And this is fantastic. I think our dull program actually gets a lot of interest because of what you said. Because,
Mhm.
generally what happens, people who have their family business, they take that enrollment thinking we just have to continue what our fathers, grandfathers have done. They don't perhaps realize the importance
Yeah,
that in their current state where technology is really making inroads everywhere, they can
yeah,
actually bring about a transformation like anything. So this is
absolutely.
fantastic. And thank you so much, Scott, for taking out time from your busy schedule. I know you travel so much, and right now based in Los Angeles, early morning for you. So
Thank you so much.
thank
Yeah,
you
so
very much for making it. And I'm
my
sure
pleasure.
your insights are going to really help students to be more courageous, to become entrepreneurs, especially the girls also, because I think it doesn't make any difference.
Wow.
However, if you have an idea and you have the passion, you can really do wonders. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so
Yeah, we about 30 to 40% of our portfolio of 300 companies are women CEOs.
wow,
Yes. And so I
that
mean
is incredible.
it's not as high as it should be, it should be 50-50, but it's amazingly high, and it's about 10 times higher than the historic rates. And so I mean, we 100% believe exactly what you said. Don't feel locked out, don't feel discouraged. Again, all of these opportunities are equal playing field for everybody. And if anything, there's an advantage to coming from a background that's different. Again, an industry that's different. All of those things make you more courageous, but also give you a big advantage, I think, in building a great company.
Great. So thank you so much. And we will hope that this brief conversation is going to motivate a lot of students, candidates who are still in that hesitant mode of whether to step into this entire new world of so-called entrepreneurship or not. So thank you so much, Scott. And thank you.
Thanks so much.